Get ready because today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite books on the craft of writing. And whether you're somebody who just started writing or you've been doing it for many, many years, I've got plenty of great recommendations, so stick around. By the way, my name is Brandon McNulty. I'm the author of Bad Parts, also the author of Entry Wounds, and welcome to my writing channel. One of the most frequent questions I get from my subscribers is, what are the best books out there on the subject of writing? And today I want to share with you my top 10 favorite books on the craft of writing. This is a personal list, it's completely biased, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to list out my top 10 books, I'm going to explain what each book covers, why I loved each of these 10 books, and also I'm going to help you decide if each book is right for you. I'm going to explain what type of writer can get the most out of all 10 of these books. Also, if you're interested in picking up any of the books I mentioned today, I will link them all in the description below. All right, now let's get started. Number 10 is Writing for Emotional Impact by Carl Iglesias. This book is a practical guide for creating an emotional response in your audience. If you've ever watched a movie or read a book and asked yourself the question, how did the author make me feel suspense? How did the author shock me or surprise me? How did the author make me fear for a character's life? Or how did the author make me care about a character who died? All those types of questions are answered in this book. This book teaches you not just how to create emotion, but when to be subtle about it, when to be obvious about it. It also teaches you a lot of different techniques for injecting emotion into a particular scene, or how to use tension in order to drive a story, how to make characters interact with each other, how to create dialogue that expresses emotion. There's so much great content in this book, and I think this book is best for beginners and intermediate writers. This is a great book to pick up in order to understand how to use emotions and how to get the most out of your scenes. Number 9 is A Writer's Guide to Medicine by Natalie Dale. This is a book that I wish had existed 10 years ago. It would have saved me a lot of research, a lot of Googling, and a lot of text messages to friends of mine who were in med school at the time. But what this book is, it's a reference guide that focuses on clearly and succinctly explaining different medical concepts, different medical settings, and different medical personnel. If you ever found yourself writing a book and you're wondering, okay, well, my character just got injured, would they go to the hospital? Would they get treated out in the field? You know, what would the hospital smell like? What would the hospital look like? What would the emergency department look like? What would the operating room look like, or feel like, or smell like, or whatever, thing like that? This book answers all those questions, and this book is a fun, engaging read. It's packed with insightful content. There are cheat sheets that'll help you incorporate the 5 senses into different medical settings. There are sections that focus on breaking down common medical cliches that keep popping up in fiction. And there are also plenty of written examples that illustrate how to write about specific areas. There's a lot of great content in here, and I'd highly recommend it to pretty much any writer, regardless of their skill level. If you have characters who get themselves injured, or they get themselves in emergency situations, or they end up at the hospital, this book is a must read. And the book I mentioned today is Volume 1, which focuses on setting and character. There's also a Volume 2 that focuses on illness and injury, if you're looking for more information on that. Number 8 is an old favorite of mine. It's one I've talked about on the channel before. It's Story Engineering by Larry Brooks. This book is a simple yet comprehensive guide to the basic elements of storytelling. It focuses on 6 specific elements, those elements being concept, character, theme, structure, scenes, and voice. I think the best part of this book, or at least my personal favorite, is its attention to detail when it comes to structure. If you've ever struggled with plot structure, or maybe read a book like Save the Cat or The Nutshell Technique, where you learned the basics of plot structure but you wanted to learn more, this is the type of book you want to pick up that'll fill in the blanks as far as what you need in order to better understand plot structure. Story engineering also does a great job at teaching you how the different elements of story weave together in order to create the overall work. It's a great guide that can help you regardless of your skill level. I think it's best suited for beginners and intermediates, especially intermediates. I think this is the type of book that once you've taken the first steps toward understanding how stories work, if you want to take that next step, especially if you're looking to learn more about plot structure, story engineering is a good bet for you. Number 7 is a book that I believe is disgustingly underrated and underappreciated. It's Blueprint Your Bestseller by Stuart Horwitz. This is the perfect book for anyone who has written a novel from start to finish and they don't know where to go next. This book is the best guide out there on the revision process. It blew my mind when I read it back in 2013 because I had finished writing a novel and I didn't know what to do next. It was like, okay, well, I'm done, but I'm not done. How do I go about the process? How do I go about revising? What this book taught me was how to analyze the story that I've already written, how to break it down into different scenes, different subplots, different themes, different character arcs, things like that, and then how to take all those elements and decide how to organize them, and also how to decide which ones can be cut, which ones need to stay, things like that. It's something that I would highly recommend to any writer who has finished a book or even finished multiple books and you just don't know where to take it next. This book will help you organize, it'll help you cut, it'll help you add, it'll help you do everything you need in order to make sure that that second draft is much better than the first one. Number 6 is The Anatomy of Story by John Truby. This is one of the most advanced writing guides out there. It is loaded with expert information on how to write a story from start to finish, how to take a story from the basic premise all the way to the finished product. There is a lot of information in this book. It is very dense. There is a lot of great material in here, but you have to take it in slowly. You can't rush through this book. You have to be patient with it. What I loved about this book was all the different techniques that it throws at you. It expects you to know the basics of storytelling, and it wants to build off those. I also like how The Anatomy of Story focuses so strongly on theme and character. At the stage of my writing career when I read it, which was probably about 4 years ago, I was really struggling with theme. It was like one of the last pieces of the puzzle that I needed before I could finish my first novel, Bad Parts. And this book took me on a journey as far as understanding how theme works and how to incorporate it in your stories. So if you're struggling with theme or if you want to learn more about character, this is a great book. And this is the type of book that I would recommend to advanced writers, people who have spent time already understanding the craft, they've read some other writing guides, they have an understanding of the basic storytelling elements, the basic plot structural elements, things like that. If you want to expand upon what you know, if you want to take a huge step forward as a writer, pick up The Anatomy of Story. Number 5 is Into the Woods by John York. This is a book that focuses on plot structure and how it works and also why we tell stories. So it's not only a practical guide, but it also contains some wisdom about why stories have worked throughout the centuries. And specifically, this book focuses on 5-act structure. Oftentimes we hear about 3-act structure. That's the most common form of plot structure out there, but this book focuses on using 5 acts, and it's an interesting take that can help enhance your understanding of how stories work. Oftentimes when we think about 3-act structure, you have that first act, the first 25%, where we get introduced to the main character and their problems and everything like that. Then the middle 50% of their story, that act 2, is where the character grows and where the character faces conflict and where all kinds of different things can potentially happen. And then you have, of course, the final 25%, which is act 3. Now, a big problem that a lot of people have with 3-act structure is that second act, that middle chunk of the story, the middle 50%. A lot of writers struggle in this area because there aren't very many guideposts to pull you along. If you are struggling with this, if you think the second act of 3-act structure is too vague, you might want to check out Into the Woods, because if you study 5-act structure, you can break down the middle of the story into smaller chunks, and you can understand what is expected of those particular sections of the story. And in general, this book gives some great advice on plot structure. It's a perfect guide for someone who wants to learn more about using plot structure or wants a fresh take on how to approach it. Number 4 is Consider This by Chuck Palahniuk. I've been talking about this incessantly on the channel recently. I love this book to death. I came into it with rock bottom expectations because I thought, it's probably just going to be like a memoir type of thing. It's probably just going to have little bits and pieces of writing advice. But when I actually sat down to read it, I was blown away by all the unique, practical advice that Chuck Palahniuk delivers in this book. Now, if you've read any of his novels, you know that he's a guy, he's a minimalist, he's right to the point with what he needs to say, and this book is no different. It gets right to the point. There are a bunch of short, succinct chapters. They provide all kinds of different writing advice on different areas of the craft, advice you won't find anywhere else, things on, just picking strong verbs versus weak verbs, or burying the I in a first-person story, or using the clock and the gun. There's a lot of of just simple, accessible advice. I love this book to death because there's just a treasure trove of different things in here that you can apply to your writing regardless of your skill level as a writer. Number 3 is going to upset some people, but I got to put it up there. Number 3 is Save the Cat and Save the Cat Writes a Novel. These two books, if you're not familiar with them, they are simple how-to guides for building a basic story. A lot of writers hate Save the Cat because they say that it's ruined storytelling or something like that, but I think the only real problem I have with Save the Cat is that it pitches itself as the last book on writing that you'll ever need, and that's just not the case. This is, however, a perfect book for beginners, a perfect book for getting yourself in the door, understanding basic things like how to write an elevator pitch, how to understand plot structure with the 15-step beat sheet, and also how to understand storytelling genres. Save the Cat simplifies everything. It's the perfect launching pad for beginners, and it's something that I have to admit, it actually helped me about midway through my career. I think I was like maybe 6 or 7 years into writing when I finally actually sat down and read Save the Cat, and when I did read it, it just totally clicked for me. The plot structure that it describes in this book, it made sense in a way that other plot structures didn't at that point in my career. That's why I'm putting it at number 3 here. It's a book I would highly recommend to beginners. It's a great launching pad. It's a great thing that you can build upon, that you could build the rest of your career upon. But keep in mind, it's not the last book out there that you'll need. If you do understand plot structure as a result of Save the Cat, you're going to want to keep building. You're going to want to check out books like Story Engineering by Larry Brooks, or check out The Nutshell Technique by Jill Chamberlain, or check out any number of storytelling guides, plot structure guides out there that'll help you grow and develop as a writer. Number 2 is Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Wayland. This book is the best book out there on writing character arcs because not only does it focus on the external physical journey that characters go through, but it focuses on that internal journey that they struggle with as well. It conveys some basic concepts of the idea of the character lie that they must overcome, the character ghost that haunts their past. There are simple, easy to understand concepts in this book, and this book is so well organized, it's so well focused, it knows exactly what it wants to do, and it nails it. And best of all, it talks about the 3 different types of character arcs: the positive change arc, the negative change arc, and also the flat arc where your characters don't change. It's a perfect guide for beginners and intermediates, and it's also helpful for an advanced writer because it gives so many different terms that you can stick in the back of your head and keep in mind when you are planning out your stories. And number 1 is Story by Robert McKee. This is a toolbox that is loaded with advanced techniques that'll help you take a step forward as a writer, no matter where you're at in your career. And it's full of all kinds of different techniques for big picture storytelling as well as the nuts and bolts. It'll teach you how to analyze a story, how to analyze your own story, how to understand how stories work, how to apply different methods and techniques to future stories that you write. There are so many great things you can learn from this book. My personal favorite is McKee's idea of scene values. He says that every scene should have a value at stake. It could be something like freedom, for instance, and at the beginning of the scene you might have a fugitive who has their freedom at stake. So at the beginning of the scene, maybe they're running from the cops. So that freedom would be a positive value. Now, in order for that scene to matter, that value has to change over the course of the scene. So if it starts out as positive, it should change to negative at the end of the scene. It's such a great technique, it's a game changer, and it's just one piece of advice in this book that is loaded full of great stuff. And if you're an intermediate writer or an advanced writer, definitely pick up a copy of Story if you haven't already. It will forever change the way you look at writing. So I hope this helps. And if you want to check out any of these books, I will link them in the description below. Also, I'm curious what you think. What is your favorite writing guide? Is it one of the books I mentioned today, or is it some book that I left off the list? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of either one of my books. Bad Parts is great if you like small town horror. It's about people trading away their sick and injured body parts in order to get healthy again. And Entry Wounds is great if you like thrillers. It's about a guy who picks up a haunted gun and he cannot put it down until he kills 6 people with it. Also, be sure to check out my other videos, hit the like and subscribe buttons for me, share this video with a friend, and as always, remember to keep on writing.